The bowl on the floor. The market smelled of smoke, rust, and old fear. Shouts echoed between the metal stalls as merchants waved their claws and tails, trying to sell cages full of strange creatures. Lights flickered above, throwing shadows over. The dusty floor. Captain Ronan Hale walked slowly through the crowd. He had seen war, death, and cruelty before, but what he saw in the corner stopped him cold. A small figure was kneeling on the ground. She had thin arms, sharp bones pressing against her skin, and clothes that were nothing but dirty rags. Her hair, once a soft silver color, hung in tangled knots. Before her sat a rusty metal pet bowl. The contents inside were barely food-gray paste mixed with scraps. She bent down and ate without lifting her head. No one looked at her. No one cared. Ronan's fists tightened. He had seen soldiers treated with honor, even in defeat, but this was lower than anything. A large alien with green scales and a thick tail stepped out from behind the cage. The man's voice was deep and rough. "You like what you see, human?" he asked, his mouth twisting into something like a smile. "That's my property, rare species, strong when fed well, useful for cleaning floors." Ronan said nothing. His eyes stayed on the girl. She lifted her head slightly. Her eyes were a bright, unnatural blue. For a second, they locked with his. In that glance, Ronan saw no life, no hope. Just quiet acceptance of her place on the floor. The alien trader laughed. "Don't waste your pity. She's not worth anything to you." Ronan stepped closer. "What's her name?" "She doesn't need one. We call her Pet. She knows her place." The alien tapped the cage with his claw. "She eats there, sleeps there, and works there." Simple. Ronan's jaw tightened. He had promised himself after the border war that he would never interfere with civilian markets. But some rules were made to be broken. He looked straight at the trader. "She's coming with me." The alien's laugh was loud enough to turn heads. "Oh? And what will you give me in return? She's rare, and I like having her crawl." Ronan took a slow breath. His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "I'll give you more than you're worth if you hand her over. If you don't, I'll take her anyway," the alien hissed, leaning closer. "You think you can threaten me in my own market?" Around them, the crowd began to gather. Some whispered about the arrogant human. Others grinned, waiting for a fight. The girl kept eating quietly, not daring to look up again. But her hands were shaking now. She could feel the tension in the air. Ronan opened his side pouch and pulled out a small stack of credits. "Enough to buy you food for a year. Take it and release her." The alien shook his head. 10 times that, or I keep my pet." Ronan didn't blink. "Or you get nothing, and you lose your teeth today." The crowd gasped. The alien's tail twitched. For a moment, the whole market seemed to hold its breath. Then the alien grinned. "You've got spirit, human. Fine, triple the price. Pay now, and she's yours. But remember this, she's broken. No matter what you do, she always be on the floor." Ronan tossed in the credits without looking away. "Then I'll teach her to stand." He stepped into the cage. The girl froze as he crouched beside her. Her eyes darted to the alien. Then back to Ronan. He spoke softly. "You're free now." She didn't move. She didn't believe him. Ronan reached out a hand. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her trembling fingers in his palm. Her skin was cold, almost weightless. He pulled her gently to her feet. She swayed, unused to standing for so long. The crowd whispered. Some laughed. Ronan ignored them. He led her out of the cage, past the alien trader, and into the busy market street. She looked back once. The alien was watching them with narrowed eyes, his tail twitching like a predator ready to strike. They walked in silence for a while. Finally, her voice was a whisper. "They will come for us." Ronan glanced at her. "Let them try." But in his heart, he knew she was right. This wasn't *** the price of freedom. The walk back to the human transport ship felt longer than it should. The girl stayed close to Ronan, almost hiding behind him, her bare feet silent on the metal ground. Every shadow seemed to move. Every whisper in the market sounded like it carried a threat. Ronan's instincts were sharp from years of service. He could feel eyes on them. Someone was following. When they reached the landing pad, the steel doors of the Resolute Dawn opened. With a hiss, 2 human Marines stood guard, rifles at the ready. One of them frowned at the sight of the girl. "Captain." "Who is this?" "A passenger," Ronan said simply. "She's under my protection now." The Marine hesitated, but one look at Ronan's face made him step aside. Inside the ship's warm corridors, the girl's steps slowed. Her wide blue eyes took in the lights, the clean walls, the hum of the engines. She reached out to touch the smooth metal, as if testing if it was real. Ronan led her to the mess hall. A tray of fresh food waited: soft bread, fruit slices, a steaming bowl of stew. But she didn't sit down. She stood frozen, eyes darting between the table and the floor. "You can sit," Ronan said gently. She shook her head. I don't." "Eat there." Ronan's voice was firm but kind. "You do now. Here, you're not a pet. You're not property." Slowly, she slid into the chair. Her small hands shook as she picked up the spoon. She took one bite, then another. By the third bite, tears began to fall silently down her cheeks. Ronan didn't interrupt. Some battles, he knew, had to be fought in silence. They didn't have long. Barely an hour after leaving the market, an alert flashed on the captain's console. A coded transmission, angry, sharp, and full of threats. Ronan played it on the holoscreen. The alien trader's scaled face appeared, eyes blazing. "You think you can take what's mine and walk away, human?" The voice growled. "She belongs to my house. Return her, or every ship you own will burn." Ronan leaned forward. "She's not your property. She's a free being. If you try to take her back, you'll find out what happens when you threaten." "A human warship." The trader's grin was full of teeth. "You'll regret this. The Council won't protect you when we come." The transmission ended. In the mess hall, the girl Lyra, as Ronan had learned, sat quietly, turning the spoon in her hand. "You shouldn't have taken me," she said softly. "They'll follow. They'll kill you for it." Ronan crouched beside her. "They'll have to try very hard." She looked at him for a long moment, as if searching for something in his eyes. Finally, she whispered, "My people had a name for humans. We called you the ones who rise when others fall." Ronan didn't answer, but the weight of her words stayed with him. That night, in the ship's war room, the crew gathered around. "The holomap." Lieutenant Mara pointed to the blinking dots on the edge of their sector. 3 ships, heading straight for us. "They're not trying to hide." "They're fast," another crew member muttered. "Too fast. If they catch us, in open space, we're dead." Ronan studied the map. There was only one way out that didn't lead straight into their guns, a dangerous route through the shattered belt, a maze of ancient asteroids and wreckage. "Set course," Ronan ordered. Mara hesitated. "Sir, the belt is suicide." "Half. The ships that go in never come out." "Better than letting those slavers take her back," Ronan said. His voice left no room for argument. Back in her small cabin, Lyra sat on the bed, holding a folded blanket like it was treasure. She had never been given her own space before. Not in years. The ship shook slightly as it jumped into faster-than-light speed. From the small window, she saw the stars stretch into long silver lines. It felt free. And yet Deep inside, she was afraid. She knew the slavers. She knew how far they would go to get back what they thought was theirs. When Ronan came to check on her, she said only one thing. They'll follow us into the belt. They won't stop until they have me. Ronan leaned on the doorway, arms crossed. Then we'll just have to make sure they never leave it. A name and a choice. The sirens echoed through the resolute dawn as the red lights bathed the corridors. Crew members ran past with rifles and gear, boots hitting the metal floor in quick, urgent beats. The air was tense, charged like the moment. Before a storm, Ronan stepped onto the bridge. The holoscreen showed 3 enemy ships behind them, closing the gap fast. The jagged symbols on their hulls glowed Crimson House Varkish, the same slaver clan from the market. They're firing. Up weapons, Mara reported, her voice steady, but her eyes tight with focus. They're out of missile range, but they'll catch us before we reach the belt. Not if we make them bleed first, Ronan said. Divert power to aft shields. Keep speed steady, we'll draw them in closer. Down in the crew quarters, Lyra sat on the bed, clutching the blanket like it was armor. The hum of the engines had changed faster, sharper. She knew the sound of a ship running for its life. A knock came at the door. Ronan stepped in, his face calm despite the chaos outside. You should be in the safe room, he said. Her voice was small. Is anywhere safe from them? Ronan didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed. Do you want to live? Lyra blinked at him. It was such a strange question, spoken like it needed an honest answer. Yes, but... She hesitated. I don't want anyone to die because of me. He shook his head. They're not after just you. They're after the idea that no one can stand up to them. If we let them take you back, they'll keep doing this to others. That's why this matters. Her fingers tightened on the blanket. She had been traded so many times, treated like an object, that she had forgotten her opinion could matter to anyone. What's your name? Ronan asked. She froze. No one had asked her that in years. Lyra, she whispered. My mother. Gave it to me before they took her away. Ronan nodded. Then we'll make sure no one takes it from you again. The ship jolted as the first enemy shot slammed into the shields. On the bridge, the crew braced themselves as the console sparked. They've locked weapons, Mara shouted. They're trying to cripple us before the belt. Ronan's voice was sharp. Return fire short bursts. Aim for their engines. Keep them off balance. The resolute dawn spun in a sudden maneuver, lasers cutting across the void. 2 of the enemy ships pulled back, shields flaring, but the largest stayed on their tail dot in the mess hall. Lyra watched the chaos from the small wall screen. Her breath quickened. The slaver flagship was still there, the same one that had carried her away from her home as a child. Images flashed in her mind, cold metal chains, the smell of damp floors, the sound of laughter when she cried. She gripped the edge of the table, so hard, her knuckles turned pale. She couldn't go back. She would rather die. Ronan returned to the bridge just as Mara called out, They're trying to flank us. If they get both sides, we're done. Not if we cut through the asteroid field early, Ronan replied. It's a tighter gap, but it'll slow them down. Sir, we'll have less than 10 meters clearance, Mara warned. Ronan's voice was firm. 10 meters is all I need. The resolute dawn plunged toward the dark shape ahead the shattered belt. Broken worlds floated in endless silence, their jagged edges glowing faintly from ancient impacts. Chunks of rock the size of cities spun slowly, casting deep shadows as the ship entered. The enemy followed, their weapons flashing between the drifting debris. Ronan's hands were steady on the controls, weaving through impossible spaces. In the crew quarters, Lyra watched from the window as massive rocks slid past like silent giants. For the first time in years, She wasn't looking at the ground. She was watching the stars. A sudden alarm cut through the ship. One of the smaller enemy craft had broken formation and was now speeding ahead to cut them off. Mara turned to Ronan. They're trying to box us in. Ronan's eyes narrowed. Not if we make them choose between us and survival. Load the Sil. Forward cannons. On my mark. He swung the ship sharply between two spinning asteroids. The forward cannons fired a single, perfect shot. The asteroid behind them cracked apart, sending a wave of debris toward the pursuing ship. The slaver craft tried to dodge too late. A massive fragment tore through its hull, breaking it into two burning halves. On the bridge, the crew let out a cheer, but Ronan didn't relax. The flagship was still coming, and it was faster than before. In the mess hall, Lyra stepped forward, voice steady now. I know a path through here. It's dangerous, but they won't follow. Ronan turned to look at her through the bridge doorway. You've been here before? She nodded. I was taken through once. My people called it the ghost path. Ships disappear in it, but if you know the way, you can pass. Ronan didn't. Hesitate, show me. The hunt begins. The ghost path swallowed the resolute dawn in darkness. Here, the stars vanished behind thick clouds of drifting dust. The only light came from the ship's own lamps, cutting through the shadows like thin silver blades. The engines hummed low as Ronan guided the ship between two jagged walls of rock. The passage was so narrow, the hull's shields sparked when they brushed against the edges. One wrong move, and they'd be nothing but wreckage floating in silence. Lyra stood beside him, eyes fixed ahead. Keep left here, then hard right after the split, she whispered. Her voice was calm, but her fingers gripped the edge of the console tightly. Behind them, the slaver flagship followed. Its massive bulk barely fit through the twisting gap. Metal scraped against stone, echoing like distant thunder. On the bridge of the enemy ship, the slaver Captain Varric watched with cold eyes. She knows this route, one of his officers growled. Varric's lips curled into a sharp smile. Good, let her lead us. Once we have her, I'll make sure she never walks again. The resolute dawn drifted into a wider chamber where enormous asteroid fragments floated slowly in a lazy orbit. Some pieces were as big as buildings, others small as boulders, all moving unpredictably. Each one could crush the ship if they weren't careful. Ronan glanced at Lyra. Which way? She pointed toward a narrow tunnel, half hidden behind a spinning chunk of rock. That's the only safe exit. But we have to time it exactly. If we're too early or too late, we'll be smashed. Mara's voice came over the comms. Captain, the flagship's closing in. They'll be on us in less than a minute. Ronan tightened his grip on the controls. Ben, we move now. The resolute dawn shot forward. The ship slid past the rotating asteroid, missing it by barely a meter. The narrow tunnel loomed ahead dark, twisting and almost invisible. From behind, the slaver flagship surged forward, trying to close the gap. Its massive guns fired once, the blast rattling the Dawn's shields. Shields down to 60%, Mara called. Ronan didn't flinch. Hold course. The Dawn dove into the tunnel. The flagship followed, but too fast. One of the jagged tunnel. Walls scraped along its side, tearing a long scar into its armor. Inside the tunnel, the darkness thickened. The only sound was the deep hum of the engines and the faint, hollow echoes of shifting rock. Slow here, Lyra warned. This is the dead turn. If you go too fast, the gravity pull will slam us into the wall. Ronan eased back on the throttle. The ship drifted around the curve. Shadows moved along the walls, like living shapes. Suddenly, the Dawn sensors spiked. Mara's voice was sharp. Captain, massive readings ahead. Something big is moving. Before anyone could react, a colossal chunk of asteroid slid into view. It turned slowly, blocking the entire tunnel. "There's no way through." One of the crew shouted. "There is," Lyra said quickly. "There's a hollow in the center. If we hit it at the right moment, we can slip through before it closes again." Ronan's eyes narrowed. "How many times have you done this?" Her voice was steady. "Once, in the dark, with no one to save me if I failed. That was enough for him. Hold tight." The asteroid rotated slowly, the hollow in its center. Just wide enough for their ship. Ronan pushed the engines, the hull groaning as they raced forward. The gap began to close seconds left. The Resolute Dawn shot through, just as the hollow sealed shut behind them. The impact wave shook the ship, but they were through. The flagship wasn't as lucky. The massive rock caught its bow, tearing through armor and sending it spinning. On its bridge, alarms screamed as sparks rained from the ceiling. Varric slammed, his fist into the console. "Keep after them. I don't care what it costs." The ghost path narrowed again, this time into a twisting spiral that led downward into a hidden cavern. Ronan guided the ship carefully, trusting Lyra's directions without question. "No, this is it," she said finally. "Once we reach the bottom, there's a crack in the wall that leads straight out to open space." But what?" Ronan asked. She hesitated. "The crack is too small for their flagship. If they want to follow, they'll have to send smaller craft. And that means they'll try to board us before we escape." Ronan's expression hardened. "Then we'll be ready for them." Dignity in the fire, the cavern's shadows seemed to close in as the swarm of enemy shuttles descended. Their hulls gleamed black in the faint light, sharp as knives. Engines roared in the thin atmosphere of the asteroid's hollow core. On the Onzi bridge of the Resolute Dawn, the crew moved quickly. Mara locked the forward cannons on the nearest shuttle. Ronan stood at the center, voice calm but hard. "They'll try to board. We stop them before they touch our hull. All stations battle." "Ready." The first wave came fast. Twin blaster bolts slammed into the Dawn's shields, sending sparks across the console. The cannons fired back, tearing one shuttle in half. It spun into the cavern wall and exploded in a flash of white light, but two more broke through. They latched onto the ship's sides with magnetic clamps. A deep, metallic thud echoed through the corridors as their cutting torches began to burn into the hull. Ronan hit the comm. "Boarding teams to port and starboard airlocks. Keep them contained." In the mess hall, Lyra sat at the table, listening to the ship groan under enemy fire. Her instincts screamed at her to hide, to stay out of sight. That's what she had always done when trouble came, but something inside her refused. She wasn't property anymore. She wasn't going to wait for someone else to save her. She slipped out of the mess and made her way toward the engineering section, where the emergency lockers were kept. Inside one, she found a small plasma cutter and a shock baton. They were heavy in her hands, but she gripped them tightly. The first breach came with a shower of molten metal. Slaver warriors poured into the corridor tall, scaled and armed with jagged blades. They moved with the confidence of predators, who thought they owned everything in sight. But the Dawn's crew was ready. Plasma bolts filled the air as humans met them head on. The corridor echoed with the clash of weapons and the shouts of combat. Ronan was in the middle of it, his rifle dropping one slaver after another. He fought with precise, deliberate movements. No wasted shots, no hesitation. The other side of the ship, the second boarding team cut their way in. This time, they found themselves in the engineering section. They didn't expect anyone small and quick to be waiting for them. Lyra darted out from behind a console, her plasma cutter flaring to life. She slashed it across the first slaver's leg, the smell of burning metal and flesh filling the air. He roared in pain, stumbling backward. Another swung his blade at her, but she ducked low and jabbed the shock baton into his side. Electric arcs danced across his armor as he collapsed. She was breathing hard, her heart pounding like a drum, but she was still standing. Over the comm, Ronan's voice came sharp and urgent. "Engineering report." Lyra grabbed the nearest. Communicator from a fallen crew member. 2 down. More coming. There was a pause, then Ronan's voice softened, just slightly. "Hold your ground. I'm on my way." But before he could reach her, the cavern shook violently. A massive explosion ripped through the upper wall. The flagship had fired a heavy torpedo into the rock above. Chunks of stone, the size of shuttles, fell from the ceiling, crashing into the cavern floor. One boulder struck near the dawn, the shockwave rocking the ship hard. Several crew were thrown to the ground. Systems flickered. Mara's voice came over the comm. "Shields at 20%. We can't take another hit like that." In engineering, Lyra braced herself against the wall as more slavers forced their way in. She fought like a cornered animal, cutting and striking with everything she had. Her arms ached, her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. One slaver raised his blade high, ready to strike her down, and then a single rifle shot blew him backward. Ronan stepped through the smoke, rifle still hot. He looked at her, scanning quickly for injuries. "You're bleeding," he said. "It's not mine," she replied, her voice shaking but proud. For the first time, Ronan saw it, not just fear in her eyes, but fire. They fought side by side, driving the boarders back step by step. Finally, with a last push, the remaining slavers retreated to their shuttle. Detaching from the hull and fleeing toward the flagship, the cavern grew silent again, except for the low hum of the Dawn's engines. Ronan lowered his rifle. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to," Lyra replied simply. "They tried to take me before. I couldn't stop them then. I can now." There was no weakness in her voice anymore. No shame. Only dignity. Asterisk, the hand that lifted her. The cavern's exit loomed ahead, a jagged crack in the asteroid wall, just wide enough for the resolute Dawn. Beyond it, the cold stars waited like a promise of freedom. But blocking the way was the slaver. Flagship, its massive hull bristling with guns. Its engines burned like twin suns, casting long shadows across the rock. On its bridge, Varric's voice roared over the comm. "You have nowhere to run, human. Hand over the girl, and I might let you live." Ronan stood on the Dawn's bridge, eyes locked on the enemy. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at Lyra, standing beside him, shoulders straight, her. Blue eyes steady. He tapped the comm. "You want her?" His voice was calm, but it carried like steel. "Come and take her." The flagship's guns lit up, firing a barrage that shook the cavern walls. Chunks of rock rained down. The Dawn's shields flared under the impact weak, but holding. "Mara," Ronan said, "divert every last bit of power to the forward cannons." "Sir, if we do that, we'll have nothing left for shields." "Exactly," he said. "Lyra, you're with me." She blinked, startled. "Me?" "You know the ghost path better than anyone. You'll guide us through that crack while I deal." With him, the Dawn roared forward. The cavern walls blurred past as Lyra called out directions. 2 degrees left. Now up watched the spike. The flagship loomed larger and larger. Varric's voice came again, filled with hate. "I'll mount her collar on my wall." "Not today," Ronan muttered. At the last second, Ronan veered hard. The Dawn scraped along the cavern wall, sparks flying, and slid under the flagship's belly. As they passed, the forward cannons fired point-blank into its main thrusters. The blast lit the cavern like daylight. The flagship's engines exploded in a chain reaction, sending the massive ship tilting sideways. Its own weight began to drag it into the cavern wall, but they weren't clear yet. Debris and fire filled the narrow space. Lyra gripped the controls, her voice sharp but calm. "Dive. Now, then hard right, trust me." Ronan followed her lead without question. The Dawn slipped through falling debris, narrowly avoiding a spinning slab of armor that would have crushed them. The crack in the wall flashed ahead, small but open. "Punch it!" Lyra shouted. The Dawn's engines screamed as they shot forward. They burst through the crack into open space, stars stretching endlessly before them. Behind, the cavern collapsed, sealing the path forever. The crew let out a cheer. Mara's voice came over the com, half laughing, half breathless. "We're clear, Captain. Flagship destroyed. They won't be chasing us again." Ronan turned from the console to face Lyra. She was still gripping the controls, her chest rising. "And falling fast. You did it," he said. Her lips curved into the smallest, truest smile. "We did it." Hours later, the Dawn floated in the quiet safety of deep space. The crew moved about with lighter steps, repairs underway. In the mess hall, Lyra sat at the table, not on the floor, not in the corner. A real plate, real food, and her head held high. Ronan walked in and set a mug in front of her. She looked up, puzzled. "What's this?" "Tea," he said. "It's what we drink when we've survived something worth remembering." She took a sip, then set the mug down carefully. Her voice was soft but steady. "When you found me, I thought you were just another person who'd walk past. Everyone always did. But you didn't." Ronan shook his head. "No one should. Live on the floor, Lyra. Not in my galaxy." Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. Before leaving, Ronan placed his hand on hers. "You're free now," he said again, "and you always will be. No one's ever putting you in a cage again." She held his gaze. "I'll make sure of that, because I'm never going back to who I was before."